Welcome to Dropped In, Craig. I am so excited to welcome you to our Dropped In community.
Thank you. Me too. I'm glad to be here. I always love connecting with people who have a interest and maybe even a passion about these kind of subjects.
Very much so, and as does the Dropped In community. So I
Yeah.
always love to ask my guests, as opposed to reading a boring bio, who you are, what you do, and why you're so passionate about the work that you do.
Okay. So who you are could be answered on many levels, and in one way, it can't be answered in words. Um, I just flashed to, as long as we're going to be spontaneous here, and just go with the flow, the spirit of this. I have a 6-year-old grandson who came to me a few weeks ago, and he comes now and then to ask me about God for some reason. And I think he's very intuitively kind of tuned in. And he was, I was responding, and then he said, "Grandpa, stop. I have a deeper question." And I thought, oh, okay. So I waited. And in fact, he came up with a deeper question. And I don't even remember what the question was, but I remember thinking, now, how am I going to answer this? So it's, on the one hand, it's going to fit what might be his 6-year-old mind. But on the other hand, his spirit isn't 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wanted to say something that might resonate with that. So I said, well, I can give you two answers. One is the mental answer and one is the real answer. And I said, so if you had come to me and you didn't know what apples were and asked me what's an apple, I would, I could even have an apple there and I could show you it's red and I could just start describing it. It's red and it's round and it's sweet and it's tart and it's this and it's that. And I like the taste and all that. And that would be, and I got it in an orchard and maybe explain about all that. And that's the mental answer, right? And I said, but if I gave you the real answer, I'd give you the apple and have you take a bite of it and taste it. And
Mm.
you'd start to know the real experience of an apple. So, in one sense, whatever I put into words in this podcast and in my book, I'm part of why I've started doing podcasts. I'm excited that I've written a book. It's called Reality Shattering Insights, and maybe we'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that not only do I talk, well, Reality Shattering Insights is explores the proven human ability to completely transform in an instant. And
Mm.
my background is I'm a psychologist, and I've been a part of a breakthrough that maybe we'll talk through. And I've been pioneering that, part of being among the pioneers in that for 4 decades. But uh, back to, well, who am I? It kind of gives you a sense of what I'm going to talk about here is so I could say I'm a psychologist, and I could say, I live in Minnesota, and like we talked about a little while ago, and that's all useful, right? But through our listening with an open mind and especially with an open heart, we start to see and feel, so to speak, what resonates. And then
Mm.
through that energy, we call it, or that resonance, we start to experience our connection. And hopefully, in this discussion, it would help us experience more of who each of us really is. And I'll talk about that again in a moment. And then who we truly are in essence, because that's at the core, the passion of why I wrote the book and what the kind of work I've been doing since I had a personal awakening when I was 28, and I've been on fire about sharing what that showed me. And it
Mm-hmm.
affected how I do therapy and everything, and it's been wonderful. So maybe I'm giving you too scattered and too big of an answer, but you get a feeling for it. Yeah, I see you smiling there. So
So much so that the back of my head hurts so much because I'm smiling. Because I know like
oh, okay.
this is gonna be such a energetically rich conversation. So and I have shivers, so that's always a good sign for soul's
Oh,
truth
cool.
arriving. Yeah.
Me too.
So you're right on point. You're right on point. So and I how lucky is your grandson to have you and to explore these conversations and himself with you.
Yeah. And but that kind of humbles me. And mine goes to um, how lucky I am to have a grandson like that who would have an
Mm.
interest and evoke what he evokes. Well, overall, and then in those special moments when he comes to me, can we have one of those talks? And he closes my office door, and we sit on the chair and we
Oh.
talk. And his little sister wants to join us, but she's not quite old enough. And he says, "Well, he has his reasons why I don't want her here, but someday."
Oh, bless him and her. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Oh, they're so fortunate. Side note, just he's coming in very clearly for me to share, but my parents had a family friend named Neil, and I always wanted him to come for dinner, for family dinners, just because I could have these soulful conversations with him. And he still is a very, very special person in my life. So, how lucky is your family to have you, and equally you to have them in their lives. So,
What that sparks in me is just, which it's actually what my first book that I've just published is the first of a 4-book series that really extends it. And the second book is touches on what you just said, that it's called um, Your Universal Powers, Life Backs You Up.
mm,
And so here we are, we're surrounded by these people with higher consciousness, or whatever label you want to put on it, more living more deeply that divine love and that divine intelligence. And to start to recognize that and feel that and take advantage of that. And it's like, I hope some of your listeners, no matter how much they've realized this or if they're brand new to this, and it's like, it's kind of weirdly appealing to them, but they don't know what they're getting into. It's like, just stop a moment and feel, look around you, and like, where sometimes I call them synchronicities. Where are the synchronicities? Where are the attractions through people, through books, through physical settings, through whatever it might be, music, art, whatever, where you start to notice an attraction and an opening of a beautiful feeling, and a feeling that when you truly feel it, there's no fear, there's no conflict in it. Now, once you kind of feel it, and then if you go into your head and think about it, you might scare yourself,
mhm,
but that's a different thing. That's not the feeling, that's your thinking about the feeling, right?
right.
So
Oh, beautiful. So, you shared you were 28 when you had a spiritual awakening. So, was this the catalyst for the work that you do today, or were you already in? I mean, if I were to guess, you're already in the arena doing the work. However, can you share
that's
a
a
little
great
bit?
question.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I was already, so I was that kid on the playground, maybe like my grandson. I don't know. He hasn't told me about this yet, but where in elementary school, and it, like the two boys on the playground would start to fight, and I'd go over and try to talk them out of it. And most of
Mm,
the time it would succeed,
mm,
or I would succeed. So when I see now in my own 3 adult sons and then in my grandchildren, this heart that I guess maybe it's been passed down in some way, and I'm just
mm,
almost choked up there. But um, so I always had that motivating me, more or less consciously or not, as I grew up, and that eventually led to a keen interest. And I was raised in a Christian church, so I got a lot of exposure to Christianity and the Bible and Sunday school, and all that kind of stuff. Which now, I mean, I can for people, clients, podcasts, wherever that are oriented that way, I can make connections there and use the language of that to really, I've had so many, my awakening, what I got through my awakening brought that all to life, and has done so for many of my clients. And I don't mean they necessarily, it's not a religious thing, it's a consciousness thing. It's a seeing the truth of reality and being able to live in it, which to me, in a way, is exactly what Christ was not only talking about and teaching about, he was facilitating it.
mm.
But that's another whole podcast, I guess. But So I was already along these lines. Late, I went to college, double majored in psychology and sociology, but had almost a third major in religion and philosophy. I took so many of those courses, and I continued that interest. And I would say in basically every way in the world, I had a wonderful life. I was raised by good parents who loved me. Yes, did I get the parenting I wanted? No, no, they weren't the perfect parents. But then you come to the point and you realize they were doing the best they could. They loved me with all their heart, and I had to learn to transcend that, right? And integrate
Mm,
that. So, um, but the so I had, I had good education and parents and a good environment physically and materially, and physically I was kind of an athlete, and I was good at, good at things I'd try that way. And but there was this growing, burning thirst deep in my soul that I'm glad I can use the word thirst now. If I had heard it back then, it would have resonated. But to me, it was just like, what's wrong with me? I have all these great things in my life, and
mm,
yet something in me doesn't seem to be able to be satisfied.
mm,
And it was just became more and more compelling. And my father died when I was 24, and
mm,
had about 9 years of dealing with leukemia in there. And my mother became a born again Christian, and it was really troubling to her that the Christianity I had learned wasn't enough for me, right?
mm,
But I was open with her, and I said, it's not that I'm rejecting it. It's just that what I've gotten so far hasn't been enough. So I was open to, and in some ways enthusiastically looking outside Christianity as it was presented to me and into various things. And I got interested in meditation.
mhm,
And I started looking at, studying, and experiencing some meditations. And then I landed on one I really liked, and saw the impact of it. But the one thing that I started getting more clear about was, it was like I felt like I keep getting closer to this something. And maybe sometimes I thought about it as enlightenment. Maybe I thought about it as seeing God. Maybe I thought about it as knowing the ultimate truth. Maybe about finding myself, finding my true happiness. There are many ways you could describe it in the mental answer, not the experiential apple, right? Answer.
mm,
And, but it kept getting stronger and stronger. And that, it turns out, looking back, was like, well, that attracted, or that engineered my interests. So if something came across my radar along those lines, I'd perk up and look at it, and maybe deeply look at it. It would depend, right?
mhm,
And then the kind of the things of the world, it's not that they were bad. You're young and you party and you do all this stuff. It's just that they're less and less attractive and satisfying, at least in the way I was going about it. Right.
mm,
So I started to lose interest in some of that and really gain interest in the other. And looking back, of course, then one thing led to another that spoke more and more directly to that, and was basically telling me, you're not broken, Craig. Because I was thinking, what, this is a defect.
mm.
What's wrong with me that I can't find satisfaction there, where everywhere else in my life I look, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, people like me, what's wrong with me?
Yes.
Well, and so that eventually, the way I will talk about it, I introduced this language in my first book, and then talk about it much more in depth in the second and third book, is my consciousness started to invert, because I was
Mm,
looking out to people, to the world, to the news, to religion, to spirituality, and that all has value. But when you finally awaken, you realize what that is, and the true nature of experience. And it makes so much sense that we would believe our experience, like, well, I'm not lovable, I'm not capable, And as a little kid, you start thinking that. And so then you start feeling that. And then on a kind of primitive logic level, you'll you'll kind of figure, well, geez, I don't think I'm this, but I hope I'm not this, but I guess I am. I feel it every day. And so
Mm.
then we just live it and we define ourselves as that. We don't realize, wait a minute, who is it that's defining that?
Mm-hmm.
Because whoever it is that's defining that could define it in a different way or any of infinite ways. But I didn't know that yet. So I came to that point where, in a sense, the outside, I mean, in a way, the outside world was still there, but it, the inside got stronger and stronger. And then I was helped. And that's why I go in depth into that in my third book, go over that threshold. And when that threshold is available in every person, in their consciousness, connected to what I call their heart or their soul, they might prefer a different word.
Mm-hmm.
It's in every person. It's like you probably know about Deepak Chopra. He said something years ago that has always stuck with me. He said, in every person, there's a God in embryo, and all it wants is to be born.
Mm, yes.
And so there's this birthing happening in me that once that birth happens, there's capital K knowledge. You know it. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
A metaphor I use in my first book, in one of my 14 reality shattering insights that I share in that book, is the drop in the ocean metaphor. So intellectually, prior to my awakening, I could say, well, I'm a drop in this ocean, and it's a huge ocean of existence and all these things, and I'm just a tiny little drop in it. And that would be true in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you really start to wake up to more of the truth, higher consciousness, more clarity, you realize there's nothing in the drop that's not the ocean. I mean, when you think about a drop of water in the ocean, physical ocean, it's like, well, yeah. And that, in fact, from one view, the drop is indistinguishable from the ocean. So this drop I experienced myself to be, which had a degree of truth. Here I am located in an ocean of energy and experience and possibilities and all of it. But there was an implicit and totally understandable conclusion or feeling that I was separate. I was a drop and you're a drop and all the stuff, and I'm separate. And then in light of that, I've got to kind of figure it out and survive and conquer and possess things and keep them and make sure others don't steal them from me. And, becomes very egotistical
Mm-hmm.
and very dissatisfying. Although there's a period of that where it can seem really satisfying because, hey, I'm figuring it out. I'm winning. I got the better girlfriend. I got the better this and that or whatever. But then it's like, no, no, no,
Ego.
no. Yep. So, like, see, because I don't want to present myself to you or any in your audience as, oh, yeah, I got awakened when I was 28 and now I'm the most enlightened thing. It's no, you just wake over a threshold that you cannot deny, and it's not an intellectual denial. It's like does water quench my thirst? Well, I don't know, let me drink water. And once it quenches your thirst, you know it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not intellectual. You can think about it intellectually, but
Right.
you know it on that fundamental level. So in the same way, it's like I know who I am, I know I'm in this ocean, and I'm awakening, and so
Mm.
over that threshold, the awakening continues. The
Mm-hmm.
levels are infinite and continue. And and since that ocean is infinite, it's like every day, every breath, I have the opportunity to know myself as that located drop, so to speak. And it's the feeling of that is like on the one hand, super, super natural and ordinary, and on the other hand, so, so special, so blessed. And knowing in my core of my being, I have that and am that. But as I know that and live that, it's like it spreads and not encompasses, it it reveals itself in broader waves, uh, in all dimensions of my life. Like I'm that drop, realizing more and more of the ocean I'm one with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still make my mistakes. I still have my moods. I still have this and that. But it's just like a part of me is awake and loving being awake, loving consciousness, willing to accept any experience. And if part of me resists the lower right part, and it's like I'm more quick to go, oh, it's okay, right? And just
Right.
relax and let it come. And so it all gets like the alchemist, it all gets turned into gold, whether
Yeah.
it's, in my human mind, and some maybe it's my spiritual heart too. I want it all at once. I want it done all at once, right? But it's like, no, it's
Yes.
happening perfectly and all at once in terms of the infinite. I mean, just as I'm saying this now, that all at once, I feel like the all at once happened when I awakened.
Mm.
So, in one way, the ultimate completion happened, and yet it's not limited. So, I
Mm.
get to enjoy the rest of it that I'm receiving. I'm made. We, the universe backs us up. We're that ultimate energy and intelligence of all things located in a human being, which
Mm-hmm.
does not separate us from the rest, but there we are located, and we're given the power of choice and thought through which we can think up, I'm a horrible mess, and then I have a reality in which I'm a horrible mess.
Right.
But I wouldn't recommend, well, think up, think positive, then you'll have that. No, because your attempt to think up the positive will be limited by your personal mind.
Yes.
Just quiet that negative mind, or even the positive one. When that pops up and you know what it is, it's like, oh, so you just accept that it came up. You're a human being, but you learn to just go deeper, quieter, quieter. When you, it's happening always, but when we can consciously join in with it and go, yes, now, yes, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll sit down and meditate or whatever form it will take.
Mm-hmm.
And it pays off. Um, so I realized I want to get back and answer your question. So I was in my life as a person, I was going in this direction. I had a heart for people. I had had a double major, as I said, in
Mm-hmm.
psychology and sociology. Then in graduate school, I became a psychologist and a clinical social worker, which was more of the apply it with people part. Um, and then, and so I was already a young licensed psychologist a couple years in when this shift happened in me. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw that I could not, and I was never really inclined to the traditional way I was taught in graduate school and stuff to do therapy. I was always attracted to the more positive. I don't know if you know about logotherapy with Viktor Frankl, and I actually got to be a student of his when he was alive.
Oh, wow.
And I'm pretty old, and or my body is. But so where was I going there? I made a joke. I lost my train of thought. Uh,
Well, you were sharing about like how you came into the spiritual awakening. You were on your third master's. Your father
yes,
passed away at 24. You're not even 28 yet, and you're
yeah.
already on your third master's.
And then when I had this awakening, I realized I can't do therapy, counseling the way I was taught
Yes.
because it was still very Freudian and it was still very, well, what you do
Mm,
is you take people into their past, their painful past, you have them relive it in order to resolve it. And it's like, that's not where the suffering comes from. I
no.
mean, yeah, yes, going into your negative thinking is where the suffering comes from. You don't to heal people, you help them understand that, and you help take them directly into that innate health and well-being and wisdom that they have right now inside that's calling to them. That
Yes.
was their thirst attracting them to even use my services. So I began to talk about that, and I got amazing results with my clients, but I felt like, am I the only one on the planet that psychologist that knows this? They're going to come and yank my license. They're going to call me a charlatan because they'd say you're promoting denial. You're
Right.
promoting people not going into their pain and into their past. But then synchronistically, because it's all one intelligence, and it's all on your side and my side, um, because it loves us.
Mm.
Uh, okay, let me stop there because that's deep. Um, Synchronistically, I was connected with the emergence of a brand new paradigm in the field through a man. I don't know if you've heard of Sydney Banks. You heard of
Mm-hmm.
him? Okay. So a lot of my second book is about, I met him, became a student of his, and learned what he calls the three principles, which is has written, now he's passed away. It's rippling through the whole world, helping many people in many ways at many levels, because there's many levels of competence in the teachers and levels of understanding. And one way to describe the most powerful uh, aspect of that understanding is it flips the paradigm. Remember earlier I said, well, you can think you're unlovable, and so you feel unlovable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think, and you thought you were unlovable because of what you saw on the outside. Your parents or somebody treated you that way, enough ways where it was easier to conclude, oh, I'm unlovable, or it could be anything, we can fill in the blank there. But it flips the paradigm that most of humanity is living in, which is the outside creates my experience,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially saying, yeah, I'm a victim.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have power.
Yeah.
When I really buy into that, I have no power and I'm a depressed mess and I'm suicidal. When I'm somewhat bought into that, I struggle and I feel like I have to hope and work and fix my rotten life. But the more we visit this possibility and actually gain insight, and I don't mean just intellectual, but you actually start to see it, you'll know if some of your listeners right now are seeing it, they'll be feeling good. They'll start to feel relieved, and they may or may not know why. But it's like you're beginning the veil of the illusion is dropping, and like, oh my God, I'm the creator of my experience. I'm not, and then yes, in a sense, I receive it. I experience what I received, but it's like, oh, I'm not who I think I am, and I'm not what I experience. I'm the one that makes that up and gives it to myself as an experience. And the more I realize that, I learn not to think positively, but to get out of the way and let the power and the wisdom that's in me do my thinking for me. Right. So now I can relax. And here's one of the other reality shattering insights in my book, which Sid talked about. Love it. And this will probably, hopefully, blow some of your listeners' minds. And that is our thinking mind, our personal thinking mind, is not made first and foremost to think. It's not made to be a thinker. It
Mm.
can, and it does. What's it made to be? A receiver,
Mm.
a still, awake, present receiver of what? Two coexistent, ultimate sides of life, the form and the formless, the spiritual and the material. I'm meant to receive the formless intelligence and energy of all things, and the consciousness and the ability, the free will to do whatever I want with that. And then on the formed side of life, sculpt. While I'm a human being, I'm going to have a life that I'm always compelled to sculpt. Even as a newborn, we were like, we part of our mind had to start making something of what was happening, and we eventually constructed our concept of life and of ourselves, and then we felt it. And the good news is, if you don't like that, here's the good news. It's an illusion. It's your thinking appearing as what you're feeling. And just hear that. Just consider that. Let yourself wonder about that rather than, well then, what about this and what about that? And what do I do? And like, that busy mind that's trying so hard can just rest.
Mm-hmm.
Just let it rest. And rest into what? Into just being here in this moment that's always been here. The now is eternal. It's always been here. Just let it rest into that and open its eyes and ears and heart feeling, and just feel what's here. Like Christ said, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you become like a child. It's like, okay, I may have learned and gained all kinds of things that I'm bringing right to this moment with you. I can speak the language and I can talk neuroscience and a whole bunch of stuff. But this moment that's emerging right now in this breath, in another very real sense, I'm just a baby to it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know this. I don't know what it holds. But the more I realize, it holds everything. It's unlimited power and intelligence and love
Mm-hmm.
and beauty and good. It's like, that's its true nature. And not because I believe it to be so, but because it reveals itself if I'll just get humble and open and give it a chance. And you're
Mm-hmm.
honestly just giving yourself a chance when you do that. And then whether you do it inch by inch, which I've done, and then thank God there came that tipping point. And in one sense, it was the end of something. I no longer had to search. I knew where it was and how to get there. On the other hand, it was the beginning of just, oh my gosh, and now I could go out, and of course, then I've tapped into the heart of humanity and into the heart of all things, and it loves itself. So that's why I said I've been on fire since then, to bring this in whatever way I can to other people. And it's been mostly through my work in psychology. And some of your listeners might think I'm looking for clients, and I'm actually not.
You probably have a
I'm,
waiting list for years.
yeah, well, I don't want a waiting list for years.
No.
I've realized, I mean, I have clients, I still see them. I haven't said yet publicly, no more referrals.
Mm-hmm.
But so if somebody feels inclined to try to reach out, I'm open to considering that. But this is more about my passion to just share what I've been gifted in a bigger, broader way for more people. And then my book series will be like, start here, read the first book.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I was going to say this earlier, I didn't just write the reality shattering insights book to talk about, well, this can happen, and here's some human examples throughout history. There's some of that in there, but I say at the beginning of the book, I'm going to try to facilitate this a little bit with the reader so you can
Mm-hmm.
actually experience it. And from what I've gotten from people who have read it so far, for a lot of them, that's starting to happen. I had one of I shared the manuscript before I published it with four people. Three of them were my former clients, two of whom were females. And both of them, interestingly enough, separately came back to me and said that the book, without my intending it, had a therapeutic effect on them. And one of them said, this helped me resolve a horrible issue I've had with men and I've been struggling with for 12 years.
Wow.
And I never, I don't think there's anywhere in that book where I talk about dealing with issues with men, you know, but went to a level where she saw something from her own higher intelligence
Mm-hmm.
and it helped heal it and resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it starts with that, but then the rest of the book series is then the second book is more about this inside out understanding and shifting the paradigm from outside in to inside out. And that puts us, I want to live in that happily ever after, most of us, but there are some of us, and I know I'm one, and I've got a feeling you are too, by the way I'm seeing you respond to I'm talking, and maybe a lot in your audience that are like, you know, I'm going to put it this way. It might turn some people off, but yes, oh, what a gift to be alive and to experience that and to experience the creation that the creator has given me, that creative intelligence has given me, and to be able to awaken in this in a way where I can just appreciate it and enjoy it and thrive. And that's all so great. And that could be it. But it wasn't enough for me. And the way it was like I realized I have an opportunity for all that, and I do want that, but I have an opportunity to turn my consciousness around and know the very creator that's allowing that. Know my highest creative self, beyond, way beyond the intellect of the human mind, but absolutely knowable and irresistible once you're onto it, kind of. And it's like, that's what my third book is about then. So the second
Mm,
book is about shifting the paradigm and inverting consciousness more and more back inside and living from the inside out more and more instead of the outside in, reactive ups and downs and all that. But then the third book is then, if any of you feel this thirst that I felt, there's a way to not just partially invert and keep going inside infinitely for the rest of your life and have a wonderful, wonderful life, but you can actually invert. There's a way to invert your consciousness, connect back to where that's coming from, and know that directly.
mm.
And if you're attracted, here's some information, right? And then the fourth book actually is kind of like, where do we go from here? Like, if you've been through this with me, where do we go from here individually and collectively?
Mm,
Because there's a needed global shift in consciousness,
mhm.
and that's not just, then that's the end, then heaven on earth, maybe in a way, but it's like, no, that's the beginning. Now when we're awake and all sane and living in that love, now imagine what we can do. And it's like,
Yeah.
I can hardly imagine, oh my God, but that's what that book, fourth book, is about.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I could be here with you all day. Can I come over and we'll have a cup of tea together? Oh, this is just it's
Well,
such a
Minnesota and Canada are kind of close.
so very true. Very true. I do have a question for you. I mean, I have several questions, but you had this awakening when you were 28 and really shifted the way this world looks and perceives psychology, if you will. How, I mean, clearly you have been well received over the years, but I can imagine there was some tension or some conflict or some feedback that wasn't necessarily to your advantage. Can we drop into that? Because you are an innovator and I absolutely love, like, you are speaking my language. And so if we can speak into that, because I'm sure it was not an easy feat.
Well, it was more so in the early days when I was more awkward at it, and maybe to a degree I was more maybe into my ego about it, like, oh, we've got the answer kind of a thing. But that faded really quickly
Mm,
because people are at the level of understanding they're at. You
mm-hmm,
can't expect a second grader to understand and do what a 10th grader can do. And
mm-hmm,
being a second grader isn't less, it's just where you're at in your development.
mm-hmm,
So I've had great luck. In fact, I'm published in a couple of professional journals applying that understanding to leadership and high performance.
mm,
And so overall, yes, I'm very well received. And I've known that. I was very much more out there in my early years, couple decades. Then I kind of have been quieter, and now I'm ready to emerge more now that I've always wanted to write a book, and my clients would always say, you got to write a book. And it's like, hey, I'm not getting any younger, I better do it, right? And I love what's happening. Um, so, and even with my clients, they'll start to shift and they'll be like, how do I want to share this, how do I talk to my, and it's First is get it for yourself first,
Hmm.
so that you are solid in it, you're grounded in it. And then you'll realize it will provide you it will show you this person, not that person to various degrees. It will give you the words. You can trust it in that inside out way of living. It's like you're letting the higher consciousness, the higher everything live through you, speak through you. So in your personal mind, you might think, oh, this person really, I'm just flashing to like I remember thinking in my early sessions, like I'd be talking to one client and I'd think, oh my God, that was the clearest and most powerful way I've ever said it. And they would go, I don't get it, Craig. I don't, you know. And then I have other ones where I think, man, I really fumbled around there. And geez, I wish I could have been clearer. And they'd go, oh my God, Craig, that was the most clear, powerful thing I've ever heard from you. So you realize it's more than you. You just show up and do your best
Yeah.
from your best place, your love, your best consciousness, and then you
Mm.
trust and you know it's okay that it's all okay despite how it may appear. And I don't mean, oh, all the wars are okay and all that. It, in one way I do, and in another way I don't. I mean, we don't want war, we don't want all that stuff in the world, but it's like um, when we wake up, we'll see that we'll either see the place of that or how it's unnecessary, and it won't even occur to us as human beings to do that. I've got one client who um, uh, liter of vodka a day, all kinds of just, I won't go into the whole story, but uh, now if she happens to drive by a liquor store and it's like, oh yeah, I used to, and if that's it, or if it's any other thought, like, you could still drink or something, it's like she says, well, that thought is like I'd be drinking poison, and it's kind of noxious to her, right? So as we awaken, that awakened state just naturally takes care of us. We
Hmm.
don't have to be always, for instance, in recovery, working on ourselves to not, you know not uh, what's the word, relapse, not
Right.
relapse. Oh,
Yeah.
so we get out of that tension and we can just get into the moment. And I'm more kind of upbeat and in the flow with you, I'm noticing, which says to me something about you and who you are, what you're doing in your life, what you're asking of me, how you're engaging me. It's just pulling this out of me, this bright light kind of stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm so grateful to have found you and to have shared with you with the dropped in community. And I cannot wait to read all four of your books. My goodness. As I mentioned, I could be here with you all day. However, we don't have all day. So how can people find you and buy your books and be in your energy?
Well, I'm stepping out maybe prematurely. So um, I have a website. It's Craig Polsfuss .com.
Hmm.
It's kind of simple. I'm in the process of putting some things together. I'm probably going to make a website just for the Reality Shattering Insights book. If people want to get that book, just put my name or that book title in Amazon and it'll pop right up. And it's in um, what? Kindle, paperback, hardcover. In the next couple months, I'm going to make an audio version of it with my own voice because my publisher wanted me to do an audio, but we couldn't find a voice, and it's like I got to do it myself, but that's going to
Yes.
take time. Um,
Yeah.
so that way, and my email is Craig@CraigPolfus.com. If people want to reach me that way. I'm really, as I said, I'm not really out there looking for clients, although I'm not saying no yet. Um, and I'm about um, sharing more of what this is and what it's about with people like you. So podcasts or maybe online discussions and presentations, or maybe even live retreats. I guess it'll depend on the opportunity.
Oh my goodness. Love it. I already have someone I'll connect you with after the show to be on her podcast. She'd
Oh,
love to have you. I know it already. So
great. Thank you so much.
yeah, of course. So a question I ask at the very end here is, what is a message of hope you can offer the listeners for those who perhaps are contemplating quitting or throwing in the towel?
I love you. My heart goes out to you. You have what you're looking for. You just don't realize it. Don't believe me. Don't believe me. Find out for yourself so you know it's real. And if what I'm saying or anyone else is saying or offering speaks to that, go find out. But it's not about adopting the one ultimate right belief. It's it's an understanding of what thought and belief is and how it is a useful tool, but it's so limiting, and that we are the ones who can use that power to come up with that. So everything you truly want and are looking for is inside of you. It all, my third book, the title is No Source in Your Heart. Life originates from inside. So what appears to be, well, there's life out there and it's happening to me. On one level, that's true. But on a more truthful level, that is like a projection that's instantaneous. You don't even notice it, and but it's coming from inside of you for you. When you go away, that goes away for you.
Mm.
So honest to God, everything you're looking for is inside of you. If you come, whether it's me or other teachers or speakers you come across who have that message, and it
Mhm.
and you feel good about them,
Yes.
and then receive it, see where it takes you.
Speaking my love language, I'm flooded with shivers. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your love, your light, your heart, your soul with us and the world. And it has just been such a blessing to have you here on Dropped In.
Me too. This has just been great. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you,
And hi to all your listeners.
Craig. Most people think scaling is about doing more strategy, more hours, more effort. Your success isn't about how hard you work. It's about how well your nervous system can hold what you're building. If your body is stuck in survival mode, no strategy in the world will make scaling feel sustainable. You'll stay in the cycle of overthinking, self-sabotaging, pushing harder while getting nowhere. Not because you don't know what to do, but because your system isn't wired to receive what you're working for. That's why I created the Inner Pharmacy Playbook. 143 power pages of real, high-level strategy to regulate your nervous system, rewire resistance, and finally step into momentum that sticks. Because you weren't meant to build your empire through exhaustion. You were meant to build it with ease, clarity, and power. And that starts here. Go to the show notes and grab your copy of the Inner Pharmacy Playbook, because the next level of your business is not about grinding harder. It's about becoming the version of you who can hold it all.